Right. So my friend Nancy asked about watercolors that I use, and this little mess right here is some of what I use. I'm going to go over the different travel kits because that's primarily what I'm working over out of. And then I will end the video with my favorite watercolors, which don't leave the studio because it's definitely not a travel kit, although I'll explain. um, so basically what I tend to do is I tend to work on the go. I do a lot of work with different aqua brushes. I've got a whole cup full of these things over here in various sizes and configurations. Everything from a nice thin pointed tip that I can easily use for more detail work to a wide enough tip that I could potentially use this for a wash. You can see that this one is empty. It's never been used because the bristles are wonky. Um, it would probably be fine for just doing a wet and wet and just a wash. I bought a whole bunch of these cheaply to try and see what I was going to like, and I don't like that one. So, that being said, for desk work, I also have cupfuls of brushes over here, and primarily I'm going to talk about three different kinds, and I'm going to show you one that's a style but not something I will use with watercolor. And this is a calligraphy brush, and this is actually an ink brush. It can be filled by placing the tip into a pot of ink, and then doing this, you can charge this chamber here with ink and be able to do all kinds of fun stuff with it. Um, and it is one of my favorite brushes to work with if I'm doing sumi-e, if I'm doing Chinese brush art. It is very large. It's very much a mop brush. So you'll get um, big strokes, very thick, and it is a lovely brush to work with, but you do need to know something about those kinds of brushes in order to make them work best for you. Um, Something I'd suggest for beginners is just your basic nylon bristled brushes. These have a lot of great spring to them, and they will stay pointed, they will stay flat, and you'll be able to have a lot of control with these brushes. And then finally, the other kind of brush that I do work with is I will work with a sable brush. And these sable, this one's nice and sharp right now because when I cleaned it, I made sure I shaped the brush after I was done with it, but these are a very soft brush. So they are great for covering a lot of area very quickly. They are not so fantastic for being able to do your little tiny detail work. So for that, I also use, and of course, now that I'm wanting it, I can't find it in my thing over here. I will use a liner brush. And then finally, what I'll use sometimes is, this is a dip pen. It has gold ink on it that doesn't clean off very well, which is fine, it still flows. This is fun because it's sparkly. And these are great for inking, and I would always recommend inking over the top of your dried watercolor. Uh, so this isn't watercolor, but this is one of the things that I like to use. And this is a Kuretake Gold Mica ink. And this is great for adding a lot of sparkle. And you can actually dip a brush in this and paint with it. And it's very opaque, has a lot of good coverage. Um, I don't know if I have it with me right now, but I do also have some metallic watercolor paints. They are not nearly so opaque, which is great if you just want to wash over them. So getting into away from the auxiliaries, no, I fib. I'm going to get back into the auxiliaries for a minute. The other thing you'll want is you will want some sketching pencils, and you can get the hardness that you prefer. I like a little bit harder pencil. Both of these are actually quite soft, and a little bit harder pencil will not leave as, yeah, this is a good one. So this is a B. The harder pencil will dance lightly over the surface of your watercolor paper and not leave a very thick line. You don't have to sketch before doing watercolor, but it's a really good idea. And then if you're going to ink, and I have a lot of different pens that I use for inking, my preference is for brush pens. This one's a bit of a rubbery tip, not my favorite, but it does a pretty good job of fine lines with a little bit of line width, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. So to get into some of the paints that I'm currently using, I have a couple that are really inexpensive and I picked up in tubes rather than buying pans, and I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. So the Daler and Rowney are okay. They have decent opacity, they're not chalky, they do have a little bit of granulation if you really, really get it wet, if you're trying to just do a very faint wash. And so they're okay. I often these are called student grade. Really what they are is they're inexpensive. These are a metal tube, so they'll actually do better as far as not drying out because they won't draw air back up into the tube after you squeeze some out. So like the plastic tubes will. I wouldn't use a plastic tube watercolor. I have in the past. There's a brand called Marie's, and they're super, super cheap. And yeah. So the other one that I'm currently painting with are Meeden, and I would say that the quality on these is about the same as the Daler and Rowney. And I picked both of these up through ordering them off Amazon. It probably, I think they're both 24 color sets, and they were inexpensive, less than $20, which is great when you're just starting out and you're trying to figure out what you're doing. So either of those, anything on that level would be fine. Later on, when you're ready to move up in quality and you're confident in your skills and you really want to punch it up a little bit more, these are both Winsor and Newton. Daniel Smith is another name that is famous for being really high quality. I acquired both of these, Payne's Gray and Lamp Black, because when I bought the Winsor & Newton travel kit, it does not come with either of those, and both of those are things that you really want. I mean, you can do without Lamp Black. There is a school of thought that says you should never ever use either white or black in watercolor. I do not adhere to that school, but then again, I recognize no media limitations. I will use any media I want to, so there. So the Winsor Newton travel kit is very basic. You're looking at a set of colors, and it does include white, and you can see that I've worked with these. They're messy. These are half pans, and they do come like this, and it comes with this teeny tiny little brush, and even me, who will work with the smallest things, finds that a little bit awkward to use. Um, and then of course it's got and you can see how it's a little difficult to put back together without killing your bristles. So then, and a little bit of palette area here, and that actually works fairly well. A couple of the travel kits I'm going to show you in a minute are not as good for this kind of thing. But that's the Winsor & Newton basic sketching kit. It is not terribly expensive. I want to say $30, maybe $40 now that inflation has hit. I've owned this for a while. So to get into other travel kits, I have a few of things here that I want to show you. This is the first one that I bought, and I do not recommend it. It has some really good features. As you can see, it's quite large. It's got a lot of colors. It came with a little aqua brush. It came with a couple of other things, little sponges that I have tossed because they stained badly over the years. This paint is chalky. This is more like the really cheap stuff that you would expect to find in one of these watercolor kits, which is, this is like something that you would give your elementary school child. And you can see how chalky that is. And what that is that the body that is put in there with the pigment is not very finely ground. It's not great, and it's not, your paintings aren't going to look great. So I would avoid anything like this. The koi is a step up, but not fantastic, and I wouldn't recommend it. I really don't use this any longer. So that being said, I'm going to show you a couple of travel boxes that I have made up from little tiny boxes. And I collect these, the mint boxes, and these teeny tiny ones are a lot of fun because I can actually throw these in my pants pocket. I wear jeans a lot. Then along with one of the little aqua brushes, and I mean, that fits in my pocket, and then I'm pretty much good to go. And in this, I have 6 paints. I can use the lid for a bit of a palette for mixing, and it's not super fantastic, but I mean, it's kind of fun because you got the little embossed letters so you can actually work in. But these are little pans that I have put in here. I have magnets that I could put into these so they won't rattle around, because that's very rattly. Um, but so what I would do is I would put the magnets on them to adhere them, but I have filled these pans partly with some of these tubes of paint and let it dry. It takes longer to dry than you think it will. It takes quite a while to dry. So give it several days, and then these are due for another fill up with more of the liquid paint before I call them done. And what I can do too is I can take a bit of paper towel, paper towels are an essential part of my travel kit. If you're on the go, you can grab like a napkin or a paper towel out of a bathroom. I've done that when I was at a convention, just grabbed a couple of paper towels when I ran out of ones that I brought from home. But I use these for blotting up excess paint, cleaning the aqua brushes, and you could take one of these and tuck it in there, and that would reduce your rattle. You don't have any more rattle if you've got that in your pocket, and you'll have your little paper towel for managing cleanup and any excess moist paint that you might have going on. So paper towels are something I always have stuck in with me when I'm doing a travel kit. So that's one kind of travel kit, and this is another kind. This is like, I don't know, gift card box or something. So what this has in it are Gansey Tambi paints, and I'll discuss at the end of this video what these are and why they're different and why they are my favorites. So what I have in here is a combination of granulating colors and graphite colors. They're much more dull, but I love them for botanicals because they're much more realistic than some of these paints are, without as much mixing, because you can mix down any watercolor paints to be more appropriate for botanicals or natural history illustration. And one of the tiny kits that I carry is actually this. So this is a hardcover pencil box, and I shove this in my purse or laptop bag, and this is a full-on kit all by itself. So this has a little tiny sketchbook in it, and it is teeny tiny, and it is lovely to work with because it does have 300 GSM watercolor paper in it. And as you can see, with a little brush, you can do quite detailed work. And this is all from when I was doing tree studies last month. Okay, except for the koi, because that's from going to the botanical garden with my son. So it's got quite a few pages in it. Gosh, I don't even remember where I got this. You can probably find it on Amazon, because it's like 2 inches by 2 inches, super cute, and really fun to work with as far as just not having to carry a lot of gear with you. This is a little spray bottle, and I have it charged with water. Um, so this is great for if you want to work wet on wet, or if you just want to moisten your paints and get them ready to go. And it is literally in a lipstick case. And the lipstick case is quite sturdy. So even though the water tube is glass, I am not worried about it breaking in my kit. So again, here's my paper towel, because always paper towel. And then this is my paint box for this kit. And this one I bought with a little paint box in it, and I suspect it's 3D printed. I love how many 3D printed things there are in the world these days. It's fantastic. So much creativity and so much fun. Now this is the paint I mentioned earlier, that's the Marie's, and it is actually pretty decent. It is a Chinese watercolor paint, and it is very, very highly pigmented. So you really don't need a lot of this paint, and if you want that more translucent look, then you just take a little bit of this and you really wet it out, and you can do nice glazes and washes with it. But if you use it in a very concentrated, you get a really almost opaque look, which is actually kind of nice. The Marie's tubes were kind of an experiment. I picked them up through an online wholesaler type shop, and I probably won't do them again, but they actually aren't too horrible. They did not dry very quickly, and that's actually part of what you're seeing there on the case, is because I thought they were dry and they were not. So, but I've cleaned it up a bit since then. So again, here's my aqua brush. This is one of my good brush pens that has its ink, but it is a nylon bristle, so that has a lot of flexibility, and it's basically like using a paintbrush. And you can see just how much flex that has. So much more than the so-called brush tip marker pens, which are not my favorite. And then I just got a sketch pencil in here and a couple of regular pens and business cards and just the usual. But this is a really fantastic little carry kit. It packs small, it's nice and rigid, so it's protected, and I can just grab that and go with it. So that's some of the kits, and this is the one that you'll see me take pictures of occasionally. And again, I bought this because I saw it, gosh, probably on a YouTube video, honestly, couldn't recall which one, but it comes apart. It all connects together. You've got a water well here, which I don't use for that. And then you've got the kit itself opens, and you have a palette, fold out palette, more palette, and two sets of paint here. I'm just going to click this all together and give you an idea of what it looks like in full setup. And then you could just hold this and paint plein air. Okay, I'd have to hold it in my left hand, very right-handed. So this is filled with the Meeden paints, and they are okay. They can granulate out a little bit when they're really diluted. You can kind of see that here dried in this palette, but that looks fine on the paper. These are a nicely pigmented paint. No idea about light fastness. Right now I'm not making fine art. I am just in my learning phase, and I do art every day. The point of having all the little kits is to make it easier for me, because the lower the cost of entry is on a given day, the more likely I am to actually make art. So being able to grab something like this and take it and sit on the couch with this and a sketchbook, I can do that. I can leave the house with it, and I do that a couple of times a week. I often, if I'm painting during the Are you bored that there yet live stream? Toast has come to join us. Hello, Toast. She's going to now go and look out the window. And we're probably going to have all kinds of shadow because she's between my light source and the camera. Thank you, Toast. So I promised that I would show you my favorite paints. However, prior to that, I want to show you the metallic pens that I got recently. And these are a Pilot G2, and they are a Pilot anyway. The other ones are G2s, but these are called Zeus. And they are metallic, and they come in all kinds of colors. Toast, please don't. And Toast is helping. So these are really fun and great for adding just a quick little highlight to your watercolor. And this is not going to all show in the field of the camera. However, these are Gansey Tambi paints. They're Kiritaki brand, and I'll show you the swatch that I did, because the inside of the box has the ability to swatch out all of the colors. And I have added in English what the colors are, because I do not read Japanese. And these are a fabulous paint. They are not particularly cheap, although honestly, what you get for this, because these are not half pans, these are not the little bitty pans that you're going to find in most of my little travel kits. These are really big pans, and I have been using these for years, and I absolutely love these. They are much more opaque than a Western watercolor. The Japanese and the Chinese watercolors are a different school of painting and their approach to pigments, and this is different. I have not researched it in any depth. I just know that they're very different paints. These, if you apply them at full strength without really diluting them at all, will actually dry glossy. I think you can probably see that on the paints themselves. And these are my favorites. I usually dilute them pretty heavily to make them more translucent so that I can do washes and glazes with them. And they are well worth the investment. I have the main set, I have the graphite colors, and as I mentioned before, I have granulating colors, and I don't have the package for that any longer. There are several other color boxes that you can get. I don't have those yet. I kind of was just doing pen and ink for so long that the paints that I have are more than sufficient, and I'm starting to use them more heavily now. But the Gansey Tambi are definitely the one that I would recommend if you aren't already used to using something like a Winsor & Newton or a student grade kit. So, and that's about it. I'm going to show you this thing that I have over here, which is basically a tin that I have absolutely stuffed full of empty watercolor pans. And you can buy these, I don't know, I think I bought a set of like 48. I'm still using them up. And you can get little magnets. It'll stick on the bottom. I find they stick best if you also put a little adhesive and glue them. And then you could change this up, and you have all kinds of different tins that you can use to put these in, and you can exchange these out and mix and match. So if you wanted to have, and these are not magneted, so if you wanted to have some of these in with this and maybe a couple of empties, I don't know why you would, but maybe, and you can use the inside of the lid on a tin for a palette. I mean, something like this guy is super handy because it's all there, but it's not particularly necessary. And let's see, one last thing here is I also like this Frisket drawing gum. It's called, it's a Resist, and it's gummy like rubber cement, only thinner, and you can apply this with a brush. Wash the brush immediately after use because it dries very quickly. This one is water soluble. Not all of them are. Check your labels. You can also load it into something like this where you have a super fine tip, but you're going to have a lot of clogging problems if you do that. It's useful sometimes, but I don't usually, as a rule of thumb. I would rather brush it on. And that is great if you want something that needs to be very detailed and very precise. You can lay this down, wash over it, and when everything's dry, rub this up and then fill in where your details are as far as color or even bright flat white of the paper. And I didn't get into paper. I have a couple of watercolor blocks here on the desk that I've been working with. Um, this one is really great, and I have been doing a lot with it. It's a block, so you can see the little narrow space there to get in and work with. But this, you can just paint on it. You don't have to worry about taping it down. This paper is fantastic. I haven't had any buckling or other issues with it. On the other hand, I wanted a little bit bigger size block, so I got this one, and I do not recommend this. This buckles. I was not happy with this at all, and paying the price for a watercolor block and then having to only do more small scale wet on dry or dry on dry doesn't make me happy. I buy the blocks so I can do wet on wet. I can do washes and glazes over the full width of the paper. But with this, if you put too much water on it, it just buckles like mad, and then you have pooling paint, and that is no good, not at all. So that is some of my supplies, some of the stuff that I work with, and it's a lot of fun, and I have been learning over the years, adding new kit, and I try not to just all the time go, oh, this is cool, I'm going to add this, but I do that sometimes because there's so much out there, and I really love the Gansey Tambi. I mean, I highly recommend this stuff, and it is um, the graphite is really great for botanicals or natural history illustration, and the other stuff is fine for what I've been doing for the dragons and whatnot. For botanicals, it would require a lot of careful mixing, and yeah, probably going to stick more with the Gansey Tambi for those. But that's my September project, is going to be focusing a lot more on botanicals. Oh, and for working in the thing, I use these brush rests that are super cute. I've got like a dozen of these little guys. I use 3 or 4 to set stuff on. So I mean, my desk is a mess anyway. But all right, I think that's it. I will be happy to answer any further questions in the comments, and I will talk to you guys next week probably. Bye now.